conversation starts with an idea. Then comes the work, the process, the commitment to keep going. This is Creators at Work. Conversations with people who make things, share ideas, and build through creativity.
Welcome to Creators at Work with your host, Donald Dunn. Today's guest is Terry M. Brown, an award-winning author of multiple novels, including Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, An Enemy Like Me, and Daughters of Green Mountain Gap. After leaving an emotionally abusive 14-year marriage, Terry rode a tandem bicycle over 3,000 miles across the United States, a journey that helped heal her heart and gave her the courage to fully step into her writing life. She's also the host of the Online for Authors podcast and continues to inspire others to chase big dreams. Let's welcome Terry to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Terry?
It's wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
You know, I think my Wednesday today has turned into Monday because I just realized in your intro that I thought I changed the name of the show because you were a guest on Authors After Action. Right. And it still said Authors After Action. So I'll get it fixed. We'll get there.
Go back and fix it. I thought it was like, I didn't think that's where I am, but okay, that's good.
No, welcome to my Wednesday.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right.
So for everybody who hasn't seen or heard Authors After Action, why don't we discuss a little bit about your background? Tell everybody a little bit about you and we'll get everybody caught up.
All right. Yes. So I'm Terry Brown. I am an author, a podcaster, and a public speaker, but I'm also so much more. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma. I play bridge. I love to walk on the beach. There's a lot of things about me. I always wanted to be an author. As a little girl, I said I wanted to be an author, but I used to also say that I wanted to be a brain surgeon and an Olympic ice skater. And I don't like the sight of blood and I'm very klutzy. So I don't really know that I knew that's what I wanted. I just knew I loved books.
Yeah.
And as a little girl, if you love books, well, what else do you want to be? Then you want to be an author. Somewhere along the line, life happens and I had children and things and world. And then I got out of this really horrible relationship. I spent 14 years in an emotionally abusive relationship. And when I got out, words started pouring out of me. And I started writing manuscript after manuscript, but I was still terrified to let anyone know anything about them because I didn't feel I was good enough. You get out of a relationship like that, you don't just immediately become, hey, I'm perfect. I was a mess. I met Bruce, who became my husband, and he said he had always wanted to ride across the United States on a tandem bicycle. And I wanted to do something big and bold and prove to the world that I still had value. And so I pretty much said, count me in. And at the end of that ride that we did in 2020, I realized I could do anything I put my mind to. And it was a matter of what do I want? And I said, I want to be an author. And 14 months later, my first novel came out.
You have became a lot. I mean, not just writing books, but now doing podcasts and everything. You're at like next level influencer,
I'm enjoying myself. This is so much fun. I was saying, somebody said to me earlier today, I had a podcast that I was the host, and they said something about, oh, thank you for doing this. And it's like, actually I do it for me because I like people. I like to meet people and be part of people, but being an author is very solitary. And so when I do this, then I get to meet people and I get to, kind of build my tribe. And it's the same thing with public speaking. I get to talk about the things I love, which is books and writing and et cetera. But once again, I get to be around people. So it kind of allows me to have both sides of the world that I enjoy.
Let me ask you this. What have you found that works with authorship as well as podcasting?
I'm not sure what the question is.
So what is it that you can take from writing books and being an author and incorporate that with a podcast? Because, for me, I do not like doing solo podcasts. I've
Really?
tried it.
Yeah.
I find myself rambling.
I feel ridiculous. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Me too.
Yeah.
And so all my shows always have guests or I co-host with somebody else or something, but I just, it's not for me. When it comes to my books, those are me projects,
Right.
but
right.
the part that I can bring to that table is the storytelling that goes along with that.
Absolutely. And I meet a lot of different authors from a wide variety of genres. So not just the stuff that I would write, and often not even things I would have picked up to read on my own. But because they've asked, I said, sure, let me read the book. And then I read and then I like it. And while I'm doing all the reading, I'm taking in all kinds of interesting things, turns of phrase, how they did or didn't use the dialogue the way I would have or wouldn't have. Do they use dialogue tags? How do they use them? All of the things. My mind is going 100 miles an hour. And then when I'm talking to the author, I'm also getting really cool ideas because I ask questions too about what's your writing life like? And I hear things that I think, oh, I want to try that. Or I've never heard of that program, or I didn't know that could be done, or wow, that's a cool way to do research, or whatever. And so I'm often able to take those kinds of things. And then even more than that, I have a book launch coming up in April, and I now have people. I can reach out to people and say, hey, I have a book launch. And so many of them are like, oh yeah, let us help. I'll put it out on my social media and that kind of thing. So, it's a wide range of how it helps me in my writing. It's not just actually how I physically write, but all of the other things that go along with writing.
And that's one thing I love about this community. And I think eventually, with self-publishing and how many new people are coming into writing books again, I think being an author will work this way as well. But the podcasting community is such a very tight knit group.
Yes.
They're always eager to help. And I'm truly blessed to be a part of that because there's some really cool people in it. And I think, like you said, these are the opportunities that we get to learn from each other, how, ideas that you guys are using in your podcast that might work with my podcast, or how I write a book and how things can twist. It does, the competition part of it's all gone. Now it's just about collaboration and helping. And that's what I really do like about it. And we still get to have our identity and our own imaginations and everything with it. So it's the best of both worlds.
I think so. I think that it just, to me, the podcasting is like the other side of writing.
Yeah.
Writing is so solitary, and it's about me and what's in my head. I can't imagine trying to collaborate and do a collaborative project. I don't write that way. I can't imagine trying to figure out how to manage someone else's expectations of me while I was writing. But podcasting allows me to then open myself up and say, here's what I do. What do you do? Let's talk about it. And I really love that aspect of it.
Yeah, me too. Let me ask you this, because this is kind of a sensitive topic when it comes to the podcasting community, right? When it talks about quality of a show and so forth, a lot of people misunderstand what that means, right? They assume that means you've got to have a guest that is like on front news TV and everything. And that is the furthest from what I consider to be a quality show. I listen to a lot of different podcasts that nobody has probably ever heard of unless they're on my feed that they see me share or something, but the quality is still amazing. And it's nothing more than just good sound, good conversation, and a structure that doesn't allow for a lot of dead space and so forth. You know what I mean? Real basic stuff.
It's are you using a decent mic?
Yep.
Is the sound good? Do you have a nice flow that's back and forth?
Yep.
Do the questions flow well? And I've been a guest on podcasts where I don't feel like the questions flow well, where I'm talking about one thing and then bam, okay, now we're on to another question. And it feels very much like I've got my questions here and it doesn't matter what you answer because my next question is going to follow that. And so to me, quality is more about whatever you say your show is going to be, is it that?
Yeah.
I have a very free form back and forth with the author that very much flows off of their answer is what my next question has something to do with that. And we go back and forth. I tell people it's supposed to feel like we're having coffee and bagels together. And so if it feels that way in the end, and we didn't have a bunch of glitchy, horrible sound and other things happening, to me, that's quality.
I agree 100%. The whole, like it's an interview and you're speaking to CNN, that's not what you want from a podcast.
No, and maybe there are some podcasts that do that and do it well, but as long as that's what you're getting, and then that's what they're providing, then it works. But it doesn't work if that isn't what people think they're going to get. And so I let people know from the very beginning, you're going to get a conversation between two authors, and I'm recording it. That's pretty much what it is. It's you get a sneak peek into this conversation that we had.
Yeah, and that's just it right there. It's okay. Like I have a list on the side that I keep of questions and so forth, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to ask those. Those are just areas that, they're more like bullet points of the just areas that I want to get into. The cool part is what comes with writing and what comes with the podcasting is the imagination. How do you transfer from one topic to the next topic, keep that back and flow still going,
right,
and still make it feel at home and comfortable,
Absolutely.
and that all comes from being authentic, experience, and a little bit of teamwork between the guest and the host.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't know if you have this problem where you have a guest who doesn't really answer questions well. Yeah. And so you'll ask them something and they'll say, yes, no. And you're like, oh, I'm going to need more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a guest on a show and that topic came up about, how to handle I'm not going to use the word difficult guest, but inexperienced guest.
Right.
And, the advice that I give to people is remember, as the host, that is your job. Your job there is to bring out that interaction. And it is okay to pivot in the middle of it and say, okay, how I'm asking these questions does not work.
It's not working for this guest. What else can I do? There's always the good questions. Tell me more.
Yep.
I'd love to hear more about how.
Get rid of the yes and no format and start going with the how, when, and why.
Absolutely.
So when you put together a book, right? How does the thought process go into? Okay, this is the way I'm thinking. This is kind of the storyline that I'm thinking about, and then preparing for a podcast. Is there any similarities there between how you're going to start the process for a book versus how this show is going to go?
I am such a pantser when it comes to writing. So there's so little preparation for writing. I usually have a very vague idea of a beginning. Mm-hmm. I very rarely know the end of my story. I usually have one character who's pretty well developed in my head. Like they've been talking to me for a while. So now I feel like I have this one character, and maybe there are a couple of other potential little characters that aren't really fully developed at all. And then I just start writing. I do better than that for my podcast. I read the book before I have the guest come on. I've written a book review at that point. So I kind of have a general, what did I think? What were some of the main points? That's done. And then before I have them come on, I write a list of questions. I very rarely use them, but I write that list of questions because it gets me in the mindset of the things I remember from the book that I really want to talk to the author about. Like, how did they develop a particular character? Why did they choose to do a dual timeline in this book? what made them decide to do 3 points of view instead of 1 point of view? Was it difficult writing from the point of view of someone else? Did I know your grandfather wrote about this same topic. Did you find it easier or more difficult because someone before you had done, those kinds of questions that come up? And so I do write those questions out, but because I've just written them, and I do that about 15 minutes before the podcast, now when I go to talk, those are all kind of top of mind and they come up very naturally. And so I don't usually read the questions that I wrote. So I do a lot more prep for my podcast than I actually do for my own writing life, which I think is probably not necessarily a good thing, but it's the way it works for me. So
I remember, when you was on my other show, I remember you saying that sometimes you would write like the title down or something on a piece of paper and say, all right, I've got it. You're on paper now. Leave me alone.
Yes. Leave me alone. Shush. Because, some people I've talked with will have 2, 3, 4 projects going at the same time. I cannot do that. I've got my podcast that is always going on. And so I'm reading all these books. I've got one thing that I'm writing. And then I have a million things that my mind keeps saying, "Ooh, we want to write this. We want to write this." It's like, I can't write more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I just can't. At the point that I get to, okay, we're at like pre-launch marketing, I can start thinking about writing again. But from the point that I start writing one piece, there is nothing else written. Maybe some little short things. I like to do flash fiction, little 50-word things, little 100-word things. Sometimes I'll write that in the middle. I call it like my after dinner mint, something to kind of like cleanse my palate and let me move on. Because, a novel, when you're writing it, it takes forever to finish.
Yeah.
And I really like completing and marking things off. And so every now and then doing some little short, one day away from my novel, get this thing done. Oh, wow. Didn't that feel good? Now I can go back to my novel. But in terms of writing, like anything substantial, one at a time for me.
Yeah. With your podcast, that would kind of fall into that shorter time frame.
Yeah.
It was good to get, something accomplished.
Yeah. And I can mark it off my list, which I really, really like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. How, just out of curiosity, how many shows do you guys do? One a week, one every 2 weeks?
I do 2 a week, one or two a week. And then I have a guest host who often does 1 or 2 a month. So some weeks, it just kind of depends. It's always at least 1 a week. I do it every Tuesday for sure, sometimes on Thursday, sometimes on Saturday. And it just depends a lot on how much have I been able to read.
Yeah.
Mine's very limited because I always read the book, always. And I can only read so much, because I'm also writing and podcasting and doing other things like life. So
yeah. That's actually a downside for myself is I am a very slow reader and I just don't have that time to one dedicate with running a business, all the podcasts that I do and everything else. But I wanted to do something for authors, a show that I could still bring them on. So I focus a lot more on their structure and advice and that type of stuff. And the more I've been doing this, the more I have realized how close podcasting and writing really is. It's not like we're distant cousins over here. We know each other.
Right.
And,
right. There's a lot of similarity in any creative endeavors.
Yeah.
So if you were to start speaking with painters and sculptors and, you're going to find, I went on a 3.5 week artists retreat. So I wasn't just with writers. There were writers and there were sculptors and painters and potters and other things, lots of things. And as we would sit around in the evenings and chat with one another, you realize that the process of writing and the process of creating a painting are similar in so many ways. You start with something blank, you have to fill it. you often start out with just like some basic shape, right? And then they add more stuff to it. I mean, if that doesn't sound like first draft, second draft, I don't know what does. There's just a lot that's very similar. So it's not surprising to me that you see a lot of similarities, because being a podcaster is also a creative endeavor.
Yeah.
And so it's that same thing. It's like, what is your process, and how do you make it work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, you are spot on. And again, I think the reason why that ties is because the end point is, whether it's a photograph, a book, a podcast, is there's supposed to be a story told. You know,
Right.
you should be able to look at a picture and not just see the picture, but unfold that story that goes along with the image that you're looking at. Same with a book, same with a podcast. And I think that's why the imagination kind of ties into that. But there's a sense of freedom that comes along with that too, you know, and that's the really neat part. So I have a lot of people that reach out to me, especially when I first started podcasting, and I get the same questions all the time. Man, I would really like to create a podcast, but I just don't know what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. And you know, newsflash for everybody, neither did I, and neither did anybody else start.
Neither did I. It was like my first podcast. What did I know? Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing.
And the second thing was, we all hated listening to ourselves. Whenever we go to edit, you're like, oh, I sound horrible. Oh, I know.
I think I sound terrible, and I've just gotten used to it. I've heard myself so much now that it's like, fine, that's just the way I sound. Apparently it's okay. Everyone's not running for the hills when I speak, so it must be all right. But to me, I sound ridiculous.
Yeah, same with me. And I think that's just a piece of armor that we all hold up in front of ourselves to protect ourselves. But the truth is in this community, people don't listen to podcasts because they like a tone of a voice, right? No. It's the content that's coming out.
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media, where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages, real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
Right. And that goes back to our topic before about quality, you know, making sure that you're fulfilling that obligation, because at the end of the day, your listeners are giving you the one most expensive thing in the world. And that's their time.
Their time.
You know?
Absolutely. You know, it's, you know, when you pick up a book and you look on the back cover, you know, and it gives you like the little blurb, and you now kind of have a feeling for what you're going to get inside. I feel like that's the way it is with a podcast too, that however it is that you're marketing your podcast and you're letting people know what they're going to find needs to be really accurate.
We were talking about marketing, you know, and that is a topic that I've been really doing a whole lot of research on, because it dives so deep, right? And the deeper down that hole you go, the more you realize, really, this is more like common sense. Not, you know, we overthink it a lot, right? Right. When we put those other pair of pants on and we're looking at it from the business side and not the customer side, we tend to overthink things, right? And so one of the things that I found is, if you really want to find keywords in things that, you know, people are going to search for your podcast and find, you should ask yourself that simple question: what questions am I answering? Right. And when you figure those out, then you can figure out the keywords that you need to create your title and your first paragraph of your description and so forth. What have you found some unique marketing ways that you have learned to kind of help increase that reach?
So for me, one of the things that I have found is, you know, mine is definitely aimed at readers. Mm-hmm. It's definitely aimed at readers who read more than, you know, 3 books a year. These are people who are actively searching for books, you know, that they don't know what they want to read next, or they have these huge lists, but they're trying to like, which one of these do I want to read next? So I'm definitely looking for active readers. So one of the things that I do is I get on Facebook to some of these big reading groups, and I let them know, hey, take a look at my podcast. You can find your next best read. And I also kind of bill it as your next best read that's not a New York Times bestseller list. You know, these are the books that I think everyone should be reading anyway. If you only read New York Times bestseller, you're missing out on a lot. There's a lot of really interesting books and interesting authors out there who are never going to make the New York Times bestseller because they're not writing the flavor of the month or whatever it is that New York is looking for, right? And so I kind of bill it that way. So that's one of the things, is recognizing what I have to offer. I also, on YouTube, I make sure that I categorize them by like fantasy, historical fiction, or whatever. And then I have links to all of those lists. So if I see someone who says, I'm looking for a good historical fiction, I can send them a link. Yeah. Hey, take a look. Here are some books, authors that I've talked to who've written historical fiction. You might want to take a look. So some of it's being proactive that way. And then whenever I am at an event where I am being an author, I always let the people know I have a podcast. And I think I get a good portion of my listenership from my readership. You know, they're like, oh, she has a podcast. And I also have a newsletter. And my newsletter gives little book reviews, but they're the same books that I have on my podcast. And I let them know, hey, you can also go listen to the podcast that I had with this author. So I give them lots of chances to interact with these other author books. And readers like that. Yeah. They want that opportunity. So I have a hard time marketing. Marketing is not my real strong suit. Right. I finally am figuring it out with my own books, and I'm getting a little better at it with the podcast. The podcast, I just kind of let do its own thing for a while. It was like, you know, it's out there and I'm using it kind of like tangentially to what I'm doing. And now I'm starting to find more ways to really put it out there. And I think the biggest thing is letting people know what you've got and how it's going to help them.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I did, I take things a little bit different approach. I'm a very techie guy. I like tech. And so one of the things that I did is I added a blog page to my website, and then I take the show notes from each episode and I turn that into a blog.
So do I. I started doing that about a year ago. So the first year I did not do it. I didn't know what I was doing. Now I do that every time. So that's.
Do you put links inside your blog post that link to another one of your blog pages?
No, I don't. I should do that.
Yeah,
so tell me about that.
so one of the things that helps with Google, right, is it has to be able to crawl throughout the pages, and it does that by going through links. So if it comes to a page, right, and there's only outgoing links, there's no ingoing links, meaning check out my latest episode on blah, blah, blah. Maybe you're linking it to your podcast page that's within your website. That makes it easier for Google to crawl through the website to pull all the data, which opens up the pages for it to be able to search and share that data. So I always include at least one outgoing link linking to another page. Maybe it's my socials or something like that. But I always also include at least one, maybe two internal links recommending other things. And then the other thing I did was I built a chat bot that crawls through my blog posts and it pulls information from my show notes. And then if somebody asks, hey, I'm in the mood for a podcast about yada, yada, it can say, well, you should check out yada, yada by Donald Dunn because it's got blah, blah, blah.
And you created the chat bot?
I did. Yeah.
Yes. So then there's those of us.
Like I said, I do like tech, but you know, the little things, like I said, with the blog and so forth, you know, those little types of SEO types things, really does help.
Well, I just made notes and I will be going back and no, seriously, it's like, these are the things that I'm still learning.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still getting things figured out. I feel like I've compared to where I started 2 years ago. I am like, wow, look at what she's doing. But compared to where people are that are way ahead of me, I'm like, yeah, I'm newbie. I'm a baby. I don't know what I'm doing, you know.
But that's the cool thing about this community, you
Right.
know, and you see it not just externally, but you just mentioned you see it internally. If I go back and I listen to my original podcast that was done with I think an iPhone, you know, the audio is horrible, the video is horrible, you know, the descriptions are, you know, I don't know how anybody found us. I really you all should have a tracking career if you found me earlier, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. But you see that growth as the seasons go on, you know, and if somebody can stick around long enough, you know, I promise you the first 10 episodes are going to sound worse than the 10 through 20 and then 20 through 30. You know,
exactly.
You will get it figured out.
Well, and it's the same way I feel about my writing. I hope to continue to grow continuously. Like I don't want to say, oh, I've reached my pinnacle. Like that's not what I want. I hope that every book that I write is better than the book before, that every podcast that I do is better than the one before, that when you look year to year to year, you can say, look at the growth that Terry has had. You know, that's what I would like. You know, who knows what I'll look like at 87, you know.
Yeah, no, I get it, you know, and that's the other cool thing too, is I see a lot more people of my age that are entering the podcasting world. And that tells me either one of two things, either we are hitting mainstream or I'm just was very early. I don't know, one or the other.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
But I think we're hitting mainstream, and that is the cool part about it, because this community grows, and that's just more stuff that we're going to learn from each other and be eager to help each other. So
one of the things that I feel like I did right from the beginning was I was consistent. You could count on one a week.
Yep.
Sometimes I had more, and that was just bonus, but you could always count on one a week.
Yep.
And I realized very quickly that in order to do that I needed to be ahead of the game.
Yep.
So I try to be, I'm not right now. I'm only like 4 weeks ahead, and it makes me crazy. I like to be closer to 8 weeks because I have a lot of other things in my life that can come in and stop me from doing anything.
Wow.
But even at the point, you know, my husband passed away a year ago. And even when he passed away, I didn't miss any podcasts because I was far enough ahead that I was able to, they just kept coming out. I slowed it up to just once a week. I wasn't trying to put out the extras. I used those extras to create more weeks for myself, but they were all there and ready. And it gives me that leeway. So like I have a grandbaby coming in June, and I know I'll go spend at least a week with my daughter helping out. I don't have to worry about it. I'm going away for the whole month of July. I don't have to worry about it because I'll have it all scheduled.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I know I've done right from the beginning is this idea of consistency, because if you're not consistent, people stop looking for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it don't take long. You know, if you're normally a once a week person and you miss
you miss 2 weeks, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 weeks.
You might be able to get away with one.
Yeah.
But two, it's not going to happen. In fact, I've even thought if I ever come to a point where that has to happen, like I don't have something, I'm liable to replay something, pull up one of the ones I really liked and put it up and just say, hey, here's a replay, because it's better to have something than nothing.
Yeah. I'll be honest, the cool thing, another little trick that I use, I just recently used this trick as well for one of my other podcasts. It's a new podcast and it just doesn't have the guests built yet. But what I do is I take a episode that did medium to good previously that fits that genre. And for me, it's easier because I've got 5 or 6 different podcasts to choose from. But I will change the title and I will use that as an opportunity to look and see if different keywords or different words would search better and use that and put that back in my memory for the next time I have a topic. I know that this type of title did not search as well as the original type of title, and again, it's still reusing the same video and same everything, but at the end of the day, it's creating another learning moment for myself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's just opportunity knocks and I try to use it to at least educate myself if I have to go that route.
Absolutely. I love finding little courses and classes and things that you just learn little pieces of things. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I have found I wasn't using Calendly at first. Yep. Now I use Calendly. I don't know what I would do without it. I don't know how I don't know how I lived without it.
Me too.
And so when I started using it, it was like, oh my gosh, that just saves me all that back and forth. Yeah. Well, what about these days? What about these days? What about these days? And it's like, in fact, I actually was a guest on someone's that we had to go back and forth because they didn't use Calendly, and she was new to podcasting, and I walked her through getting a Calendly. She was not tech savvy at all. She made me look like a tech genius, and I am not one of those. But I walked her through because it was so difficult for me to find a date that she and I could, the Calendly, it would have been done.
Yeah.
And I helped her get it all linked up to her calendar and everything else. And she has thanked me a bazillion times over. And I thought, I did it for you, but I also did it for every guest that you have come after me.
Yeah. And again, that's what this community does.
Right.
I don't know how many times I've started out a show and somebody realizes what I do, and then they'll ask a question here and there, and I'm glad to be able to help.
It's like I'm not competing with you. Like you know something that I don't know, I know something that you don't know. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Anything that I can do that makes it easier for me. I'm figuring out how to use Descript right now. That's something new that I picked up in the last 6 months, and I'm loving it. I use expand text, I think is what it's called. And that's when I can type like 4 or 5 letters and then a whole paragraph pops up.
Oh, wow.
Do you not know about? Yeah. Okay. So like people will reach out to me and ask about my show. How can I get on it? Right. So mine's online for authors, and I type in OFA info and an entire email pops up. And it allows me to put in a couple of key things for their specific, and then I can send it. And so I'm getting those emails out in a couple of keystrokes versus, right? Yeah. It's called Text Expand or Text Expander, something like that.
I need to look that up because I still use the old method. I have a Word
copy and paste. Yeah.
I copy and paste.
Well, so, and I was doing that, but this text expander, and then once a week, it will send you a little, how many weeks you've used it in a row, how many hours you've saved, and at the end of the year, it'll tell you. I save at least an hour a week, and often up to 3 hours a week using text expander.
Yeah. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah,
I definitely good because I lose these Word documents. I'll forget.
Yes, and then you have to search for them, and then you have to. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and this is great. And you use the little. It's a little hard at first because you have trouble remembering what did I save it as. But even then, you can just pull up the little app, and you could go through and go, oh, TFP, whatever. And I've started creating a thing. I kind of know how I label them now. If it's something to do with my online for authors, it starts OFA. If it's something to do with my 10 little rules for a double-butted adventure, it's 10 LR. If it's something to do with, you know what I mean? Like I've got little things that I do now, and it's like, oh, info, poof, up it pops. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah.
Well, other than our little tidbits that we have just given, if there's a new person out there that would like to get into the creating of the world or writing a book or something, what advice would you give them?
Do it. Like, don't wait for a course. Don't wait until you have a degree. Just go ahead and do it. And if you can't start it today, look at what can you do today to move you toward that. What is something you can do today? Is it going ahead and purchasing, some earphones and a mic? Is it getting a ring light so that, I have a little ring light above me right now. So, it makes me not look like I'm hiding in a dark hole. Is it, what is it that you need? Is it looking up different platforms? Like, do you want to try to use StreamYard? Do you think you can do it on Zoom? Do you want to, looking at those, find the one thing that you can do today and get started. And don't let technology and the fear of technology keep you from doing it, because I am not a tech guru person, but I'm figuring it out as I go, and I learn more each time. And as you learn more, it becomes easier.
You are 100% correct. And I think it's really cool that there is growth out there in that side of the house too. It used to be Spotify had that thing saying, if you got a cell phone, you can have a podcast, and
right.
they're not wrong. You can.
You can. It's easier if you have a little more than that.
Yeah. And then, but you can start there. You can start with Spotify, it used to be called Anchors or something like that. Now it's podcasters for Spotify or something. And you can start there with as simple as a phone, and don't be upset. Don't go, don't even look at the stats. Just forget about them.
Oh, and one of the things someone told me one time was that they don't look at their stats except for quarterly.
Yeah.
Don't get yourself all tied in knots over your stats. Look at them quarterly, see what you can see, change what you can change, make adaptations as you go. But if you worry about your numbers every day, then you'll quit.
Yeah.
If I paid attention in those first several months to how many people were listening, I would have said, well, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? Nobody even knows I'm here. No one's listening. And no one was listening.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because really those early ones, maybe no one should listen to anyway.
Well, and that's just it. There's so many other things behind the scenes that people don't understand, right? Like for your SEO, when you do something with SEO, you're talking 4 to 6 weeks before it even
indexed and up. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not everybody sees Joe Rogan now, but they forget that those episodes are looking at, say, 3,000, 3,010, 3,020, whatever episode he's on. That tells you he's been doing this for a minute.
He's been doing it for a while. Yeah. Well, and I say that when people talk about, oh, I don't know, I can't write. And it's like, well, Picasso, the first time he picked up a paintbrush, I doubt that he did a masterpiece.
I'm sure he didn't.
Right? On day one, he's figuring out, how do I hold this stupid paintbrush, and how do I get the paints to glop onto there correctly?
Yep.
And how do I know that? Because I've tried painting and you don't know what you're doing. You're just kind of, and how do you learn? You learn by doing, and you learn by doing some more, and you learn by doing some more. And so these podcasters out there who have the big numbers, well, they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
And that's why they have the big numbers. And so some of it actually is just a time game. Do you have a quality product, and are you willing to put in the time until you have enough quality product that when people start looking up, I'd love to have a podcast about, books and authors. Oh, here's one who has now over 200 episodes. That might be right. When I had 3 episodes, no one cared.
Yep. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about picking a topic that you're passionate about, right?
Absolutely.
Something you truly enjoy, because that is going to circle you around other people that enjoy that same topic.
Right.
And next thing you know, you're going to be having these conversations. It's almost like we quit doing a podcast and we're just having a conversation
Right.
back and forth.
Right. In fact, I often, when I'm a guest or even a host, forget that we're videoing and that this is going to go live somewhere, because I'm, and I'll see myself sometimes and I'll think, oh, I've got to learn not to get so, like, I need to be more still. Because I get into it just like I do when I'm talking to you at a diner somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And this is, so I have to be, I remind myself, it's okay, but I get very, woo.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I just, I enjoy the conversation and I enjoy the time. Well,
Yeah.
Ms. Terry, why don't you tell everybody where is it that they can find your show and find your books and all that good stuff?
The best place to find everything about me is at my website, which is terrymBrown.com, and that's Terry with one R. You can find all of my books there. You can find my social media icons are there. Online for Authors is there. You can sign up for my newsletter. I've got a contact me page if you just wanted to reach out. Truly, if there's something about me you want to know, that's where you're going to find it.
All right. Well, I hope all of y'all got some of this, because there was a lot of good little bits of gold that you can pick up and it'll save you time and money and everything else when you finally realize that the only competitor that you need to compete with is yourself. Just get that person out of the way and just start. And
Just start. Yep.
I think you'll find that life is so much better, and you'll have fun and you're going to meet new people and learn new topics. So I hope all of you guys out there enjoyed the show. Miss Terry, thank you for coming on. I had a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Y'all take care. Be safe.
You've been listening to Creators at Work, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. Discover more creative conversations across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.